Swamp Thing number 23, written by Charles Soule, art by Kano and David Lapham. So, last issue, Cedar came by, planted a tree that made whiskey, and everyone who drank of it went like blood crazy. And then Constantine showed up, proclaimed himself king of the town, and disconnected Swamp Thing from the green. So, this issue picks up with a married couple hiding in the village. Like, one of them's pregnant, just don't want to be found, and their house is invaded, and they see these people have caught them, and just like, hey, you two, it's the McCutcheons, everybody. Let's get them out of here. And they're just like, please, no, she's pregnant. It's like, oh, yeah, great. Come on, it's time to join the party. So they get dragged, bloodied up to Constantine, and Constantine's like, hey, you guys, you got to drink from the whiskey. It's super important you drink from the whiskey. So he forces it down their throats. And of course, they then transform into bloodthirsty people themselves. So turns out Rory, the old guy who was like the first one to change, has been dubbed second in command to Constantine's kingship. And Constantine's like, oh, Rory, how things going with the seeds? And it's like, yep, we're collecting them off the tree now. We're barreling them all up, and then we're going to ship them across the countryside. And it's like, great, perfect. By the way, I'm going to go pay a visit to our guests, make sure everything else is going on well. So he walks down to the police station. The cop there, having drunk tons of the whiskey, is just asleep at the door. And Constantine's like, yeah, good job, officer. Keep up the good work. So he walks his way into the jail cell, and we see inside is Swamp Thing, who is just down on the ground, unable to move, barely able to speak. And he's just like, oh, no. You know, this is just the whiskey talking. Trust me, I am aware of that. But you know what? I don't care. Because what this whiskey does is it unmasks the deep, like, who you are underneath it all inside of humanity. Like, you could call it like the devil's rum. I've tasted the devil's rum, and yeah, it'll knock you out, but it doesn't do anything like this. And that's why we're going to send this thing countrywide and possibly the world as a whole, because this is the sort of thing that everyone needs to try. So he leaves Swamp Thing alone. We see Swamp Thing is completely disassembled inside of his cell. And he's like, I am not okay. I am barely able to stay alive, let alone reconstruct myself. And I can't feel the green at all. So I got to work with what I got here. And so he uses all of his energy and essence to stretch his vines across all the twigs in his cell. And he reforms a skeleton of a body. But he's too weak to break the bars, obviously. So he looks out and he sees the cops who's passed out in the door. He sees his keys, and he uses, again, every bit of energy he has to stretch out a vine and grab the keys. So then we see a man who has taken his neighbor's dog because it was yapping so much, and he's saying like, you know what? I'm going to fry you. I'm going to fry you and eat you. That's what I'm going to do, because I'm that evil. And as he's walking with the dog, stumbling drunk, he crashes through a hedge and finds a kid named Reggie, who has not been turned because he's a kid and he does not drink whiskey. But we see him be like, hey, Reggie, you know, you gotta drink the whiskey, kid. And he's like, I don't wanna, it's poison. And he's like, you gotta drink the whiskey, kid. So he's about to attack the kid. And then Swamp Thing shows up, and the kid screams because he's a skeletal Swamp Thing. And he's just like, go back inside and don't come out until everything's back to normal. And Reggie does so. He just runs inside. So we see everybody has barreled up all of the seeds. They're ready to go deliver it to the group or to the rest of the countryside. They're just going to drive through the night, plant them in every village across the countryside, and then by tomorrow it'll be all over England. So that's the plan. And then the police officer comes up to Constantine, and he's like, sir, I'm sorry to say that the prisoner has escaped. And Constantine's like, that sucks. Rory, could you take care of this? And Rory just smashes a jug of whiskey across the cop's head, knocking him out and probably killing him. And Constantine's like, oh, well, no big deal. He can't connect with the green anyway. He's super weak. Spare as many people as we can to go find him, and then we'll set him on fire. So the whole town goes out with torches and such like that. They look everywhere they can for Swamp Thing. And we get a quick glimpse of Constantine here as he watches the parade of cars all leaving the village. And he says, king today, emperor tomorrow. Not a bad job. So the towns finally zero in on Swamp Thing. He tries to fight back, but he has literally no more energy to do anything. And they are taking their torches and are about to set fire to him. And he's like, yeah, they always set fire to the monster. I've seen the movies. And you know, I don't think that if I die right now, I'll go to the green. Like, I think if I die right now, I just die. And I am not about to let that happen. Constantine is not taking that from me. My one gift that I have been promised. So as he's being burned, he does reach out to a little bit of the green he has left. He focuses all of his energy into a flower that sprouts up next to Constantine. It latches itself onto his face and releases some spores that knock him out. And as soon as it knocks him out, the spell is broken. It did require some consciousness on Constantine's part. So as he falls to the ground, Swamp Thing gets all of his green energy back, and he just immediately imbues himself into the entire countryside. He forms as like a kaiju coming out of the ground, and he sees all of them, and he can hear this voice in his head that says, kill them all. They deserve it. Kill every last one of them. And he's like, I kind of wanna. And it would be so quick. I could do it without even like thinking of it. I could just step on them and it's done. And I could stop. Like, he stops all the cars. He makes sure none of the cars are leaving. But he's just like, I could do it. And I could destroy it all. And he's like, yes, do it for the green. Kill them all. But then he sees Reggie. And he's like, okay, not all of them deserve it. They're not all bad. So, yeah, not going to happen. So he just destroys the tree. He sets up blockades for all the cars so they're unable to leave. And then he sets more of those poppies up to basically knock out everyone in town until they're able to sleep off their drunkenness and become sober again. So that's where it basically ends. We cut back to Louisiana. Swamp Thing comes back and he's like, yeah, there was a voice in my head telling me to do some pretty messed up stuff. I should probably look into that because that wasn't me. I don't know what that was. But when he gets back, he sees, I can't remember how I pronounced his name, Capucine, whatever it is. She's strung up in a bunch of roots and clearly beaten to all hell. And she's just like, oh, geez, you got beaten up. I'm sorry. I should have been here for you. And he's like, nah, don't worry about it. He actually was coming looking for you. I just told him that you weren't here, and he got super pissed off about that. It's like, what do you mean he was looking for me? It's like, oh, he called himself Cedar, and he left you a message. And Swamp Thing looks behind him and sees the tree line. The roots are spelled out saying, it's time, Professor. And that's that. That's the issue. I don't know what the hell's going on. In terms of the whiskey plot, I think it was good. I think it was a nice solid. It didn't really do so much for Swamp Thing as a character. I think it's more of a setup than an exploration within itself. I like the idea that there was this voice in his head, basically as the green side of him saying, hey, you're not one of them. They're not one of you. Kill them. Like, this is what your job is. And he has to actively, like, fight against that voice now. I'm assuming that's what it is. We might find out something completely different later on. There is a part in here where Swamp Thing says, like, I know Constantine was not in control of himself here, so I don't entirely blame him, but, like, we're going to have words. So I look forward to seeing how that's going to wrap up of this kind of back and forth they've been doing of Constantine v. Swamp Thing. It's an interesting dynamic. Beyond that, Cedar, he seems like an interesting character, possibly an interesting villain, because clearly he believes he's in the right. He thinks he's doing good things. So I want to see how that all turns out. But in the end, I'd give this issue, I'll give it a 7.5. It does feel like it's lacking a bit of gravitas that a lot of Swamp Thing issues have had, but it is just a fun story in its own right. So kind of worth checking out, but not the biggest deal if you miss it.